There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Chronicles. I'm your host, Max Rego. I am joined today by a couple good friends of the program, former Chronicle sports editor, Evan Kolin, and former Chronicle sports managing editor and former host of this very podcast, Shane Smith. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Good to be
Thanks for
back.
having us.
All right, well, I won't belabor the point. We're recording this podcast Tuesday morning, September 21st. A little less than 24 hours after Duke got some major news on the recruiting front, as Dereck Lively, the top center and the second-ranked overall player in the country, committed to the Blue Devils last night over Kentucky in a massive recruiting battle. So lots to get to with this news, but Evan, what's your initial reaction to this recruiting development?
Yeah, it's kind of the obvious reaction, but it just shows that at least, in the first couple of years, post-Coach K's retirement, doesn't look like Duke's recruiting is going to fall off at all. And to me, it kind of two big takeaways emerge. One is that Coach K truly has created a program where, he himself is not the only draw. Obviously, a lot of people say they want to play for Coach K, the greatest coach of all time, but he successfully created a program where these guys are still going to want to come, even if Coach K isn't the coach. But secondly, and we don't know why all these different players committed, but at least it seems to me that a lot of these top players, at least originally, I didn't think Jon Scheyer would be able to take in this kind of recruiting class, but it does seem like these guys want to be part of sort of the next era. Guys, you always hear guys like Jay Billis, they're so proud of being. They weren't, there for Coach K's first year, but everyone knows, they were the first big class that Coach K had that turned Duke into what it is today. And I think these guys, maybe, they know the history, they see that, and they sort of want to be the same thing for Jon Scheyer and this next era of Duke basketball. So that's really the biggest thing that stands out for me. People say, how is Jon Scheyer getting all these recruits? He's never been a head coach before. Coach K's retiring. I really do think a lot of these players, they want to be a part of this next era.
Well, I think that, not only that, but Scheyer is not wavering in his approach to how Duke recruits top players. And by saying that, I mean, Duke started recruiting Dereck Lively when he was, barely inside the top 50 prospects. Duke was the first major blue blood on the scene to recruit Lively, and for that entire time period that they recruited him, that was the only center that Duke talked to. Not counting Filipowski, I'm seeing him more of a power forward, but the only true center that Scheyer talked to in joining this recruiting class. And that's just the mindset that Duke is the destination for top basketball recruits, and they knew their guy and they were not going to go after anyone else. And I mean, when you look at this class and how it's shaping up as a whole, obviously, some people expected a drop off. I don't think any of us did, but when you look at the battles that Duke has won so far, they're going toe to toe. Jon Scheyer and his staff are going toe to toe with the Blue Bloods. They went after Dereck Whitehead and went toe to toe with Kansas. Boom, got him. Went against UNC and Indiana and Kentucky for Filipowski. Went against Michigan State for Jaden Schutt. Went against Kentucky for Dereck Lively. And then they're going to end up going against Syracuse and UCLA for a couple more recruits. They're going against the Blue Bloods there, and they're winning right now. So no drop off. I'm going to have to agree with you there, Evan.
That's the point that I think can't be overstated, is who Duke beat out for Dereck Lively. I mean, with it being Kentucky as the kind of the proverbial runner-up for his services. I mean, you're talking about John Calipari, who put in the time with Dereck Lively. It's not like he was a late recruitment for Kentucky. Kentucky was going after him, throughout the summer. Lively had a great performance at the Peach Jam, kind of saw a rise in the recruiting rankings because of that. And just Jon Scheyer and Nolan Smith and Chris Carrawell and company beating out Kentucky for a guy like this is impressive. I mean, we can talk a little bit about how he seems to fit with the other guys in the roster, but having Lively, knowing that he is going to join up with other top recruits, maybe he does, maybe like you said, Evan, maybe he does want to be part of that first class that gets a new era for Duke basketball started. And that's saying something, because the differences between this year's team with Paolo Banchero and AJ Griffin and company and next year's team, Shirer's first year, it'll be pretty severe. There's probably be a pretty different playing style, and just having those guys that Scheyer thinks will fit what he wants to do in his first year, I think is very notable, and it's notable who they beat out, obviously. So probably going to shift gears here a little bit. Wanted to ask you guys, what do you, obviously, Shane, you mentioned how you view Kyle Filipowski as another top player that Duke has gotten over the summer, as you view him as more of a power forward. So, how do you guys view Lively and Filipowski and some of the other freshmen or upcoming freshmen that have committed? How do you view them as fitting on the court? Start off with Filipowski and Lively for obvious reasons, since they're over in the front court. So, Evan, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Filipowski and Lively sort of work together perfectly. Lively, a little bit more of a defensive-minded center. People compare him to guys like Willie Cauley-Stein, Tyson Chandler. He's more of a score-first guy. He's also a good passer for a big man, which is huge, because Filipowski, he's a little bit more of an offensive-focused forward. He's going to be a versatile scorer. He doesn't have the defensive skills that Lively does. But yeah, those two, I mean, they work perfectly right down there in the front court, and that's easily going to be, one of the better, if not one of the best front courts in the entire country. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to say. I think their playing styles fit perfectly with one another, and I'm definitely excited to see how they run together on the floor. Shane?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just opens up a world of possibilities for the offense they can run. I mean, especially, if Duke's gonna bring back potentially, a guy like Wendell Moore, or add a guy like Mark Mitchell, and then Dereck Whitehead is great. Those guys are all, their biggest strength is getting to the basket. So if you can put, your 2 6'11" plus big men out on the perimeter, and your opponent has to respect that, that's a crazy weapon to have. And as much as Duke fans have been excited about, Mark Williams' defensive potential, Lively is, in my opinion, Lively is better, because he is comfortable switching out on guards. He has a 7'8" wingspan. He's going to change games in the paint. He's going to change games defensively, just the same way Filipowski is going to change things offensively. And, they're already friends. Filipowski was a big factor in recruiting Lively. I think they're going to have great chemistry, and Duke can have some sort of Wendell Carter, Marvin Bagley vibes again.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things I was noticing from watching a lot of highlights from Lively and just reading a lot of the breakdowns, the Tyson Chandler comparison is a good one, Evan. I saw that as well, and I think that's actually a really solid one. And just the fact that he's obviously he's a good screener. He's a rim runner. He catches alley-oops, lobs, and he's a good shot blocker. But also he brings kind of the modernized version of what a college big man can do. I mean, he's a guy that he is willing to step outside. He can space the floor, and he's got a pretty solid jumper. So that just gives Duke all the more flexibility with what they want to do. How they want to run their offense, and how really they want to have the dynamic between Filipowski and Lively play out. Because if they want to go small, they could use Filipowski maybe as a stretch center even. Maybe that won't be too great defensively, but they could also use him as a forward and just slide Lively into the post. And that Wendell Carter, Marvin Bagley dynamic is maybe would be repeatable for Duke. And yeah, so Shane, you kind of mentioned how Dereck Whitehead kind of factors into it, but how do you view Lively and Whitehead, because these are probably the two most notable names in the recruiting class, probably based on their summer rankings. I know Filipowski's kind of moved up the rankings recently, but how do you view that dynamic between kind of scorer and big man kind of working in tandem there?
Yeah, I mean, Whitehead is probably my favorite player in the class. I know that this 2022 class is very shooting guard, kind of wing dominant, with Amari Bailey, Keontae George, Shaden Sharp, and then Dereck Whitehead. Dereck Whitehead is an incredible defender, I'll say first, but offensively, he can score at all three levels, and he's really started to develop, especially in AAU this summer, his 3-point jumper off the dribble. And I mean, Max, you mentioned how great of a screener Dereck Lively is. And the fact that he can pop, both him and Filipowski can pop. And you have to respect that. But Whitehead's biggest strength, although he's an all-around player, is getting to the rim. He effortlessly glides to the rim and will, dunk it on whoever's in his way. And, with them, I can also see, given how good Dereck Whitehead is defensively, he's going to force a lot of steals. Dereck Whitehead is an all defensive team ACC caliber guy. He's going to force steals, and Dereck Lively can run the floor. So screen and roll, screen and pop, transition, things are limitless for the way those two are going to operate together. They fit very well.
Any thoughts on that, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't specifically how the two are going to play together, but just two things that stand out about the team in relation to both of those players is, one, it's been a while since Duke has truly had a big man, like a center that can anchor the defense. Obviously Zion was sort of that player, at the 4 for that 2018-19 team. But yeah, you got to go back, some time before you have a center like Lively on a Duke team. Obviously, fans are hopeful that that's what they're going to get in Mark Williams this upcoming season. And you saw a little bit of that toward the end of last season, but obviously most of last year he was unproven, wasn't getting big man. Mark Williams was not the recruit that Dereck Lively is. Dereck Lively is basically Mark Williams' potential, but should come in and do that pretty much right away freshman year. And the other thing is, I know Shane has some thoughts on this, so we can go to him after I bring it up. But I have seen some concerns that, unless this Duke team this Duke team is not going to have the high-end number one scorer that Duke teams have had in recent history. So, it might be a little bit more balanced scoring, or I know, Shane thought that might have been a little bit disrespectful toward Dereck Whitehead. So I guess I can go both Shane and Max. You guys both have takes on this. Do you agree that it's a concern that next year's team might struggle with having, that number one guy that the most successful Duke teams have had?
I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue, because, one, like he said, I'm huge on Dereck Whitehead. I think he can be a scorer just the way he's developed his jumper. But I don't think it would matter regardless, because how many Duke teams in the past can you guys think of where every player on the floor was such a threat to score? I mean, if things are shaping up how they shape up, and Duke gets Mark Mitchell, top 10 recruit, and puts him at the 3, you got, potentially a junior Jeremy Roach, 5-star point guard staying for 3 years. And then you got 4 top 12 recruits to follow that. And, maybe there isn't the Zion, Paulo, Bagley, Jason Tatum, that mold, but they're all they're all 4 of them are like a notch below, and they can all score from 3 levels. And they're going to be getting a lot of open looks, especially with their athleticism and their height and their size. I don't think it's going to matter personally, but if you're talking about the guy who's going to score, take the last shot down the stretch, I would be more than comfortable if Duke gave that to Dereck Whitehead.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that is always an issue, or not an issue, but like a question going into the season for Duke is depth versus, playing those top end guys. And, we've seen in past years, Duke has had maybe a 7-man rotation versus maybe 2019, 2020, where they had more of a, at times a 9 or a 10-man rotation, especially early in that season. So I actually thought, one of the comparisons, I guess, from a team perspective, I know that this team had some great NBA players on it, Luke Kennard and Jason Tatum, but the 2016-17 team, actually, as I'm looking at it here, had 6 players average at least 7 points a game, which I thought was really interesting. It's a very balanced scoring load. And obviously that team never clicked for maybe 3 days in the ACC tournament. But that might be a similar, a decent comparison for what people should be expecting from Duke in 2022, Scheyer's first season. So I think they'll have balance, and they'll be able to mix it up in different ways and get creative with their sets and with their lineups. But I also think they will have a couple of go-to guys. I mean, I think Lively is going to be the guy that can come up with a big defensive play. And like you said, Shane, I think Dereck Whitehead is really smooth with the ball, and he can get his shot really any way he wants. And if he just adds more to his game, until he gets to Duke and that fills out his frame, I think he should be a more than suitable scorer for the Blue Devils come his freshman year, which is obviously still over a year away, obviously, which we have to obviously, hammer that point home, because obviously, there's still another season to be played before then. So, with our last topic, I kind of wanted to ask you guys, this may not be the end of Duke's 2022 recruiting class, as insane as that sounds. Couple guys on Duke's radar, maybe they'll be looking at the transfer portal. So Shane, what are your thoughts on how Duke might be looking to round out this 2022 class?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, Scheyer had his targets. He gave out 7 offers in this class, and he's looking to close on 6 of them. And the remaining 2 are JJ Starling, generally ranked around the 30 to 40 range, and then Mark Mitchell, who's a top 15 recruit on 247 composite. Yeah, and they've got visits scheduled. JJ Starling is scheduled to come to Duke on his final official visit this weekend. I think gets on the 24th of September, and then Mark Mitchell will be there for Countdown to Craziness. And with those 2 being their last 2 official visits, I think this class has a good chance of wrapping up soon, and if they've got a good chance of getting both of them. I mentioned Mitchell earlier. Starling is generally considered the second best shooter in the class of 2022, behind Jaden Schutt, who's obviously already committed to Duke. Just a versatile, loaded class. Could have not only top end one and done talent, but also, guys who stick around for 3 or 4 years. And, it could all be wrapped up before the 2021-22 season starts, and it can all be, just focused on Coach K's last ride.
Yeah, 2 things from that. One, you mentioned the shooting. And that's also another thing that really excites me about this 2022 class. We didn't talk about Jaden Schutt much, but, having the Duke over the past couple of years, outside shooting has definitely been a struggle for Duke. That's been a weakness sort of year in and year out. So, and finally having a couple of those knockdown guys who you can really trust, if they're open, you can't leave these guys open or they're going to hit the shot. Having those guys is going to be huge for next year's team. And the second thing is, sorry, trying to remember what I was thinking about. just having sort of the depth. You mentioned there's people who are going to stay. Jalen. We didn't talk about Jalen Blake. He could easily be, a big piece of next year's team. JJ Starling. He's not going to start. He's obviously going to be a huge guy off the bench. Not only this team's going to have balance, team's going to have shooting, going to have defense. It's also going to have the depth to go 7-8 guys. Definitely a lot to be excited about next year. But obviously, you mentioned can't look too far ahead. You got a big season coming up for Duke basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you guys said, especially on the shooting part. It'll be interesting to see how they surround kind of these top recruits maybe with some improved shooting, or if they look, maybe you never know, they could look in the transfer portal if they need one shooter or something like that. So that's all we had for today. Thanks guys for joining. Make sure to tune into DukeChronicle.com for all Duke men's basketball coverage over the next couple months, because it's obviously this is about a week or a little over a week late, but we are officially less than 2 months out from college basketball getting started. So it's coming fast, which sounds crazy to say that, but it's coming. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.